The opening shot glows with sunlight. White fences, fresh-baked pies, children laughing. Matthew and I stand in our backyard, hands clasped, smiling for the camera. The documentary's narration begins with my voice soft and trembling. We just wanted to help people. That was all. The scene cuts to footage of us hosting a community dinner. Matthew laughs easily, carving roast chicken, pouring wine for the neighbors. His hand rests lightly on my back, guiding me as if I might lose my way without his touch. To everyone else, it's tenderness. To me, it's ownership. When the lights fade and the guests leave, the silence inside the house feels heavier than the applause outside. The camera pans across polished floors, glistening dishes, and a single wine glass still half full. Mine. I remember the night that glass shattered when I tried to speak my mind. He smiled then too. We found purpose in helping others, I say again in the interview chair, but my tone falters. The interviewer notices. My hands twist in my lap. It gave us meaning, I add. The pause lingers like a bruise. Archival clips play next. Articles about the Hayes Hope Foundation, smiling photos of the perfect couple. A local pastor praises our generosity, but over his voice the faint hum of static builds. Then a cut, a news anchor, face solemn. No one knew what really happened in that basement. The music shifts, softer, darker. A quick flash of the basement door appears. Closed, unmarked. A small padlock gleams beneath the dim bulb. I remember the sound it made when it latched at night. The sound still echoes when I close my eyes. Clara, the interviewer asks from off camera, when did you start feeling unsafe? I hesitate. The air in the room thickens. He was charming, I whisper. Kind, people adored him. I did too. But there were moments, small ones, when something in his eyes would change. Like a shadow moving behind glass. Cut to a clip of Matthew giving a speech at a fundraiser. Evil hides in apathy, he declares, voice steady, smile flawless. The audience applauds. His words echo into the next scene. Our kitchen, empty, spotless, lifeless. In the background, the faint sound of a dripping tap continues under my narration. Perfection was our promise to the world. But promises can rot, even under pretty lights. The camera pans slowly toward the basement door again. The dripping stops. Then the screen fades to black as my voice murmurs one last line, barely audible. That's where the truth began to breathe. I used to think love was safety. That being chosen by someone like Matthew meant I had done something right in this world. He had that kind of voice that made every word sound like truth. When he said, "You're my anchor, Clara," I believed him. But anchors don't save you. They pull you down, slowly, beautifully, without a sound. The documentary cuts between our wedding footage and modern-day interviews. In one clip, I'm sitting under harsh studio lights, trying to recall when the cracks began. He didn't shout, I say quietly. He didn't have to. The next shot, Matthew in our kitchen telling me I've forgotten the grocery list again. His tone is soft, measured. You really need to be more organized, he says, and I nod, even though I remember writing it down. Later that night, I find the list tucked neatly inside his coat pocket. Gaslighting. The experts in the documentary use the word. I called it love. Matthew's public image became our prison. He smiled for cameras, kissed my cheek, called me his miracle. But every compliment was a chain. He'd say, "We have a purpose, Clara. Not everyone understands divine work." I didn't understand either, not at first. Flashbacks flicker across the screen, late-night drives. Closed doors, whispered prayers. The first time he brought someone home for one of our missions, he said we were saving her. A runaway, he claimed. She'll thank us one day. I didn't question him, not then. I wanted to believe in the goodness he painted around our sins. In interviews, I struggled to find words. He made me feel chosen, I confess, voice breaking, like everything cruel was holy if it came from him. The footage slows on Matthew's face, a frame frozen mid-smile. The narrator's voice returns. Love, when twisted, becomes obedience, and obedience, when blind, becomes complicity. As the episode nears its end, the camera lingers on my reflection in a dark window. My voice, distant and trembling, carries the last line. He said we were purifying souls. I didn't realize mine was the first to burn. They show Leah's photo on screen. 22, bright smile, hair always tied up with that red scarf. The same scarf I used to compliment every morning when she came to help at the shelter. She called me Miss Clara, even though I told her not to. She said it felt respectful. I liked that. I liked her laughter, the way she spoke with warmth that reminded me of the person I used to be. The night she vanished was supposed to be ordinary. We were closing late after serving dinner to the homeless. Matthew told me he'd drive Leah home since her car wouldn't start. I hesitated just for a second, but his voice softened that practiced calmness. "You're tired, love. Go rest." "I'll handle it." The next morning, her phone kept ringing. Then her mother called, crying, asking if I'd seen her. My stomach turned to ice. Matthew's expression didn't change. He wrapped an arm around me and said, "She probably ran off again. You know how these kids are." In the documentary, they show police footage from that week. Matthew sitting across from Detective Farrow, his tone gentle, even helpful. "Leah was troubled," he says. "We just tried to help her find faith again." When the camera cuts to me, I'm sitting beside him, fingers clenched, eyes darting. The detective's questions blur into background noise. My voiceover breaks through. "I thought she ran away." I wanted to believe that. Belief was safer than the truth. The screen fades to grainy security footage. 1:14 a.m. Matthew in the shelter hallway, bucket in hand, scrubbing the floor. The image flickers, then zooms in. On the counter for only a second, a glimpse of crimson fabric. Leah's scarf. I remember waking that night to the sound of running water. Matthew stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, humming something faint and familiar. A hymn he only sang at funerals. When he noticed me watching, he smiled. "Couldn't sleep, darling?" "No. What are you doing?" "Cleaning. You know I can't stand stains." He kissed my forehead, his hands still damp. I didn't ask again. In the present-day interview, I look into the camera and whisper, "I think that was the night the house started to smell different. Not of bleach, of something we were pretending not to name." The screen fades to the faint hum of that same hymn. Then, a police radio crackles. "Unit 7, possible lead on Leah's last location." The episode opens with a map. Red pins stretching across 5 years, 5 towns, 5 disappearances. All women, all volunteers. The camera pans over newspaper clippings. Local shelter worker missing. Faith couple expands charity reach. At the center of each photo, there's Matthew and me, smiling, hands clasped, haloed by candlelight. Detective Warren's voice overlays the montage. "It was too clean," he says. "Too practiced. Every tragedy followed a dinner, a prayer, a photo op." His words sound clinical, but his eyes, in the interview, are wary, almost pitying. They believed they were saving people. That's the part that frightened me most. The scene cuts to our dining table. Polished wood, 2 glasses of wine, the clink of silverware. The atmosphere hums with false peace. Matthew slices his steak with precision, eyes never leaving me. "They're starting to ask questions," I say softly. He doesn't look up. "Let them ask." Warren came by again. He mentioned Leah. His knife stops mid-cut. "You worry too much, Clara. Faith doesn't survive fear." I stare at the candle between us, the wax running down like blood. "How long can we keep this up?" I whisper. Matthew finally smiles, the kind that feels rehearsed, almost sacred. "As long as we must. This is our purpose. You and me." That night he made me swear it again, his voice low, steady, his hand pressing against my chest as if sealing a vow. To protect our work, to protect us. If one of us falls, we both burn. In the documentary, my voiceover trembles as I recall it. He didn't need chains to hold me. His words were enough. The screen shows a close-up of my wedding ring, the same hand that once signed donation checks now shaking as it grips a glass of wine. I look into the camera, barely breathing. I thought love meant loyalty. I didn't realize it also meant burial. The last frame blurs. Matthew's reflection in the window behind me, smiling faintly as Detective Warren's voice echoes. To understand the Hazes, you had to understand that their faith wasn't God's, it was each other's. The episode opens with a trembling handheld shot. A neighbor, Mrs. Keene, sitting on her porch, clutching a blanket. Her voice is brittle with guilt. I used to hear things, soft cries like someone whispering through the floor. I told myself it was the pipes. You don't want to believe something awful lives next door. The screen cuts to a wide shot of our house, the Hayes residence, its white paint gleaming beneath a gray sky. Then the camera drifts downward, settling on the old storm doors that lead into the basement. The hinges are rusted, the handles padlocked, 3 layers deep. Detective Warren's narration overlays the image. We always suspected the basement, the smell, the noise, but nothing could have prepared us for what we found when we finally broke through those locks. Flashlights cut through darkness. The air is thick, damp, full of echoes. A row of chains dangles from a support beam. Rusted tools line a table, pliers, scissors, wire. The camera lingers on a dark stain that spreads across the concrete, impossible to mistake for paint. Then Clara's confession tape begins to play. Her voice, slow, uneven, almost childlike. There were nights I couldn't sleep. I'd hear voices, begging, crying, praying. I'd cover my ears and tell myself it wasn't real. She pauses, then exhales sharply. He said they were being saved. He said pain was part of purification. I told myself it wasn't my place to question God. The footage cuts between her trembling face in the interview and forensic stills of the cellar. Every word lands heavier than the last. Sometimes I brought them food. I left it by the stairs. I never looked. I didn't want to see their eyes. Her tears fall silently as she continues, voice cracking. One of them called my name, a girl. She said, "Please, Mrs. Hayes, please help me." And her voice breaks completely. I turned up the music so Matthew wouldn't hear her. The sound fades out. The only thing left is the faint hum of a washing machine upstairs, blending with echoes from below. A haunting rhythm of domestic normalcy and hidden horror. Detective Warren's voice returns, low and grim. We found 4 sets of chains. 2 had been recently cleaned. Only 1 was broken. The screen cuts to black, then flickers to footage of Clara staring at her reflection in the interrogation room mirror. She whispers to herself, "I thought silence would save me. I didn't know it would make me part of the noise." The camera opens on a desolate field behind the Hayes farmhouse, floodlights cutting through the mist, forensics in white suits moving like ghosts. Shovels hit soil with slow, deliberate rhythm. Each strike feels like the heartbeat of something buried long ago, refusing to stay hidden. Detective Warren's voice overlays the scene. We didn't expect more than 1. But the ground kept giving them back. A forensic tech lifts a tarp corner, revealing a fragment of fabric. Faded blue, the sleeve of a volunteer uniform. Another body, another name. On-screen graphics appear: Leah Foster, Emily Darnell, Rachel Green. Each one matched to a donation entry from the Hayes' charity ledger. Clara's face fills the frame next, pale, hollow-eyed, hair unkempt. Her interview begins mid-sentence. "He told me they were safe," she whispers, "that the ground was sacred, that we were planting new beginnings." Her voice quivers, falters. "I helped him. I carried one end of the tarp. I told myself it wasn't what it looked like. But my hands still smell like soil." The screen splits, her confession on one side, forensic footage on the other. Every time she mentions a burial, the camera cuts to a body being lifted from the dirt. Her words are both a prayer and a plea. "You didn't try to stop him?" Warren asks from off-screen. Clara blinks, tears falling without expression. "He said God was watching, that we were chosen to cleanse. And if I disobeyed, he'd bury me next." A long silence. Then, almost inaudibly, "Sometimes I wished he would." The documentary's narrator adds, "By the 6th grave, Clara's truth fractured. Every confession contradicted the last, each more desperate to separate herself from Matthew. But every story ended the same, her hands in the dirt." Warren's closing interview line echoes like judgment. She's the only witness who doesn't know if she's also the killer. The camera pans back to the field. 6 body bags in a row beneath the cold light. The wind stirs the tarp, revealing the faint outline of a 7th mound, still untouched. It begins with static. Then a faint hum. The documentary screen flickers, time-stamped April 12, 2019, 11:42 p.m. A single light bulb sways above a concrete room. The basement. Detective Warren's narration is hushed, as if the footage still holds power over him. "We thought we'd seen everything, but the tape changed the case, and how we saw Clara Hayes. The video shows Matthew first, kneeling beside a young woman tied to a chair, whispering prayers. His face is calm, reverent. He dips a cloth into a bowl of water, presses it to her forehead. "You are forgiven," he murmurs. Then his tone hardens. "But the body must be cleansed." The scene cuts abruptly. A flicker, a shift in the camera angle. Now Clara stands behind him. Her hands tremble as she holds a silver basin. Her voice barely audible. "Matthew, please." He turns, smiling gently. "If you love me, you'll help me save them." That line plays again, echoing over and over as the footage slows. Her face frozen in terror, obedience, and something unnameable in between. In the present-day interview, Clara's eyes are swollen, her lips trembling. "He told me it was mercy," she whispers. "He said pain was the doorway to redemption." "And you believed him?" Warren asks. Her gaze drops. "I believed in us." The documentary cuts between the footage and new commentary. Experts, psychologists, pastors. "It's coercive control," one explains. "A cult of two, built on dependency, guilt, and the illusion of divine mission." Another counters, "But she had choices." "Every accomplice does." The footage continues. Matthew moves out of frame. Clara kneels before the bound woman, tears streaking down her cheeks. Her whisper barely catches the mic. "I'm sorry." Then the image fractures, glitching, blurring, ending in abrupt static. Silence fills the screen. Then Warren's voice returns. The tape destroyed any notion of innocence or villainy. It was devotion turned into complicity. A brief montage follows. Courtroom sketches, public outrage, protesters holding signs reading "No forgiveness for the faithful," and "Love isn't an alibi." The world has chosen sides, but none fully understand the woman at the story's center. The final frame returns to Clara's interview. The room is dim. Her voice is faint, resigned, almost prayer-like. "He said if I loved him, I'd help him save them. And I did. I helped him." Those words linger, printed across the screen in bold white text, the documentary's tagline. The documentary cuts from the basement tape to a dimly lit studio interview. Rain streaks across the window behind the speaker. A woman in her late 40s, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her name appears on screen. Samantha Price, former employee, Hayes Community Shelter. Her voice trembles slightly. "Clara came to me one afternoon. She looked empty, like someone who'd been hollowed out. She said she was seeing a therapist, Dr. Evelyn Ross. She told me, 'Evelyn says I'm not crazy. That love shouldn't hurt this much.'" The camera lingers on Samantha's expression. Guilt, fear, something unresolved. Then 2 weeks later she came back. Her hands were shaking. She said, "Matthew followed me to her office. He smiled the whole time." After that, she never mentioned therapy again. Detective Warren's narration overlays grainy footage of the lake near the Hayes cabin. 3 months later, Dr. Ross was reported missing. Her car was found 12 feet underwater. The windows shattered inward. A chilling silence fills the screen. Then archival footage. Officers pulling twisted metal from the murky lake, a lone shoe caught in the reeds. Back in the interrogation room, Clara sits under the harsh white light. Her wrists rest on the table, her fingers twitching. "I didn't kill her," she says, her voice breaking. "I just didn't stop him." "Did you know what he planned?" Warren presses. "He said he was protecting us, that she was poisoning my faith." "And you believed him?" "I needed to." Her confession echoes faintly as the scene fades into muted footage of Dr. Ross's smiling photo, projected behind the narrator's closing words. The woman who tried to save Clara became another chapter in the Hayes pattern of silence and devotion. The audience sees the same pattern: kindness followed by disappearance, redemption followed by death. Clara's tears glisten under the fluorescent light, her voice small and raw. "She told me to leave him. I tried. I swear I tried." The camera pulls back, showing her reflection in the one-way mirror, fractured, doubled, fading. A brief pause. Then Warren's voice returns, colder now. "That was the interview that changed everything. After that, we stopped calling Clara a victim." Rain hammered against the windows that night, the kind of storm that swallowed every sound. In the dim light of the kitchen, Clara stood motionless, staring at the cup in her trembling hand. The tea was darker than usual, laced with a powder she'd crushed inside a folded napkin hours earlier. Her voice in the documentary is quiet, almost detached. He said storms washed away sin. I wanted it to wash away him. Flashback footage plays. Matthew enters the kitchen, his shirt half unbuttoned, a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. He kisses her forehead. "Another night of salvation, my love?" "Something like that," she whispers. The storm rages louder. Wind rattles the door as thunder rolls through the house. Matthew drinks, slow, confident, unaware. Clara watches him until his hand begins to tremble on the cup. His expression shifts, confusion bleeding into rage. "What did you—" Before he can finish, she steps back, clutching the cellar keys. "You said if one of us falls, we both burn," she murmurs. "I'm just—" ending the fire. The documentary cuts between reenacted shots and police evidence photos. The cellar door slams shut. The locks click one by one. Through the gaps, a muffled scream. The camera pans over the basement walls. Rusted chains, a single flickering bulb, and a row of shallow pits beneath plastic sheets. Clara's voiceover trembles. "I heard him calling my name for hours." Then nothing. Months later, investigators in hazmat suits dig through the damp soil behind the farmhouse. Detective Warren's narration overlays the grim discovery. The skeletal remains were found bound, jaw fractured, but the autopsy revealed dirt in the lungs, a sign of breath at the time of burial. The screen freezes on Warren's grim expression. "Meaning?" the interviewer asks. "Meaning," he says, "Matthew Hayes was alive when she buried him." Clara's interview returns, her eyes hollow. "I thought he was gone," she whispers. "I needed him to be gone. Why bury him yourself?" "Because no one else would believe me if I said he'd finally stopped." The rain sound fades, replaced by the quiet hum of static, as if the documentary itself hesitates to continue. Then a new clip. Forensic photos, time-stamped weeks after Matthew's supposed death, showing faint footprints near the gravesite. Warren's final words carry a chill. Whether it was guilt, delusion, or something darker. The night Clara said it ended may not have been the end at all. The camera opens on a packed courtroom, flashing bulbs, murmured tension, and Clara Hayes seated at the defense table in a pale gray suit that swallows her. Her wrists tremble slightly as she clasps her hands, eyes fixed on the floor. The narrator's voice cuts through the noise. The woman once known for feeding the hungry now stood accused of burying them. The prosecution begins with cold precision. A slideshow of photos flickers across the screen. The basement, the chains, the remains. The prosecutor's voice rings sharp. "She cooked for them, cleaned their blood, buried their bodies. That's not obedience, that's participation." Cut to the defense attorney, calm, measured, weary. "You've all seen the tapes. You've seen the fear. Clara Hayes was not a partner. She was property." The documentary interlaces real trial footage with dramatized reenactments, showing Clara's shifting emotions, sometimes blank, sometimes trembling, sometimes silently mouthing words no one can hear. When Detective Warren takes the stand, the tone shifts. "Detective Warren," the prosecutor begins, "in your professional opinion, was Mrs. Hayes complicit?" He hesitates, glancing toward Clara. "She wasn't innocent," he says finally. "But she wasn't free either." That single line becomes the headline of every newspaper. The jury listens to hours of psychological testimony about trauma bonding, manipulation, and the mind's desperate instinct to survive. Dramatized flashbacks show Matthew whispering threats under candlelight, his hands on Clara's shoulders like a priest blessing a sinner. When the verdict arrives, the courtroom holds its breath. The foreman's voice quivers slightly. "We find the defendant guilty of manslaughter in the second degree." Clara exhales, not relief but resignation. Cameras flash like lightning as the judge's gavel falls. The narrator speaks softly. "Some saw justice, others saw tragedy. But for Clara, it was simply the end of belonging, to him, to herself, to anyone." As the bailiff leads her away, Clara glances once at the gallery, where Detective Warren sits alone. Jaw tight, eyes unreadable. The screen fades to black, replaced by a title card. 3 months later. New piece of evidence would change everything. The screen fades in with the dull hum of fluorescent lights and the hollow clank of a prison door. Clara Hayes sits across from the interviewer in an orange jumpsuit, her posture eerily calm. The room is bare except for a table, 2 chairs, and the ever-watchful camera lens. The narrator's voice whispers, "It had been 112 days since the verdict, and Clara had requested to speak again. Not to appeal, but to confess." The interviewer, a young documentarian named Lila Rhodes, adjusts her recorder. "Clara," she begins gently, "why now?" Clara's lips curl faintly, almost a smile. Because the silence started talking back. She folds her hands on the table. Her tone is flat, rehearsed, like a prayer recited too many times. "He said he'd save me from sin. But I think he was the sin." Lila leans forward, searching Clara's eyes. "You mean Matthew?" "I mean what's left of him," Clara answers, gaze distant. "He doesn't stop just because the world thinks he's gone." The documentary cuts to grainy footage, a montage of prison corridors, the faint echoes of footsteps, a voiceover from Lila. She claimed to hear him every night, whispering through the vents, calling her by the name only he used, Little Saint. Back in the interview room, Lila presses on. "Do you regret killing him?" Clara's head tilts slightly, as though she's listening to something the camera can't hear. Then she looks directly into the lens, eyes glassy, unblinking. "I didn't kill him." A heavy silence follows. The camera lingers too long. Clara's breathing slows. Her pupils dilate. And somewhere in the static of the microphone, faint but distinct, comes the sound of another breath. A low, steady exhale that isn't hers. Lila freezes, glancing behind her. Nothing. Only the flicker of the light. The narrator's final words break through the distortion. In documentaries, the truth lives in what the camera sees. But sometimes, it's hiding in what it hears. The frame zooms in on Clara's expression, calm, knowing, as the audio hum deepens, and then abruptly cuts to black. Rain lashes against the lens as the documentary's final act begins. Detective Warren's gravelly narration fades in over aerial footage of a misty coastal town. Gray waves crashing against rocks, seagulls cutting through fog. "Some stories end with a confession," he says, his tone heavy, reflective. "But some just change their address." The scene cuts to dim security footage from a seaside shelter in Maine. The timestamp flickers, 3 months after Clara Hayes' prison interview. A man stands at the edge of the frame, handing out blankets to the homeless. His build is leaner, his hair streaked with gray, but his posture, the tilt of his head, the way he rests his hand on a woman's shoulder, is unmistakable. "Matthew Hayes." Detective Warren's voice continues, lower now. "We ran facial recognition. No match, no records. But I've watched that footage more times than I care to admit, and I know what I see." The camera zooms in on the man's face. Soft smile, calm eyes, a quiet composure that seems almost reborn. He steps into the light for a moment, and the scar near his temple glints faintly. The same scar from the old police photos. Cut to the prison. Clara's recorded interview plays on a small TV inside the shelter. The man watches, seated in the corner, a paper cup of coffee trembling in his hand. On screen, Clara whispers, "I didn't kill him." The man exhales in slow, almost affectionate. His lips curl into a faint smile. "You never could," he murmurs, voice barely audible beneath the hum of static. Outside, thunder rumbles over the shore. The camera pans through the window, revealing his reflection, half shadow, half light, before cutting back to Detective Warren sitting in his office, staring at a printed still from the footage. "Maybe it's a trick of the light," he says quietly. "Maybe ghosts look a lot like the people we failed to bury." The music builds, a haunting blend of cello and distorted audio from Clara's last interview. As the frame dissolves, the documentary ends on one final shot. The man, Matthew, standing on the empty boardwalk, the sea behind him. He looks straight into the distant camera, as if aware of being watched. Then he turns away, disappearing into the fog. Detective Warren's closing words echo over the static. "Love didn't die in that cellar. It just found another body." The screen fades to black, the faint sound of waves merging with the echo of a woman's laughter, Clara's, distorted, fading, and finally swallowed by the sea.